So how did an investment banker who, knew absolutely nothing about fitness, had zero background in the food industry, and basically possessed no operational experience in retail, managed to build a $500 million empire in his backyard in just 7 years?
It is wild, right? Because he didn't invent some groundbreaking product or anything.
Right. He didn't write a single line of code in a garage somewhere. He literally just found the ultimate financial cheat code hiding in plain sight.
And the really fascinating part to me is that this specific path to immense wealth is almost entirely ignored by mainstream business culture. I mean, we are just so collectively obsessed with that whole Silicon Valley mythos.
Oh, totally. The idea that you have to start with a blank page and disrupt a legacy industry.
Exactly. You have to become a unicorn. And because of that, we completely overlook the multi-unit operators who are quietly building these massive conglomerates right under our noses.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are dissecting the actual unvarnished mechanics of the franchise industry today. And if you are listening to this, there is a very high probability that you view franchising through a pretty limited lens.
Yeah, most people do.
You probably picture someone, buying themselves a grueling fast food job.
Yeah.
Or maybe a retiree cashing out their 401k to run a quiet, romantic, little neighborhood coffee shop.
Which, as we are going to break down later, is mathematically one of the most dangerous financial traps you can possibly step into.
It really is. So we are looking past that romanticized facade today. We are going to analyze the actual operational data to understand how these empires scale to over 100 locations. We'll look at the strategic brilliance of territory density and why certain professional backgrounds, particularly military veterans, possess a massive, almost unfair operational edge in this ecosystem.
Yeah, to really grasp the scale of the money being made here, you have to start by completely changing how you view the people who are actually buying these businesses.
Right.
Because the corporate entities selling these franchises, the franchisors, they spend tens of millions of dollars analyzing the psychological and professional makeup of who actually succeeds in their systems.
They aren't just handing the keys over to anyone with a cleared background check and a pulse.
No, not at all. They have identified very specific, ideal customer personas. And if you look at the data, the first major group is categorized as the corporate escapee.
I think a lot of people listening will instantly recognize this profile.
Oh, absolutely. This is the mid to late career professional. They have a high income. Maybe they're a VP of operations or a director of logistics.
So they have incredibly solid management skills, but they've basically hit a concrete ceiling in the corporate world.
Right. They are completely burned out on the bureaucracy. They spend their days in endless meetings about meetings, and they just want out of the rat race.
Yeah.
But here is the critical psychological differentiator. They still crave the safety of a structured environment.
They want out, but they don't want to jump out of a plane without a parachute.
Exactly. They love data. They love having a corporate support system. They want the freedom of being an owner, but they are absolutely terrified of the raw, unpredictable volatility of launching a startup from zero.
Right. They don't want to figure out product market fit. They just want to be handed a playbook that already works.
Precisely. They want the guardrails. So that's the first group. Then you have the second major demographic, which the data labels the serial entrepreneurs or the hackers.
Okay, so a totally different energy here.
A completely different energy. We are talking about the hustle culture operators. These are the folks who, built a portfolio of 20 short-term rental properties, or they scaled a massive e-commerce operation during the boom.
I get the real estate angle, but why would an e-commerce hacker want to buy a physical brick-and-mortar franchise? I mean, that seems like a massive step backward into the analog world.
Well, because for this group, it is a pure synergy play. They are looking to bolt complementary concepts onto their existing infrastructure just to capture more margin.
Oh.
Let's take the short-term rental operator. If you own 20 properties, your biggest logistical headaches and your biggest expenses are constant maintenance, plumbing emergencies, and daily cleaning turnover.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. So instead of continuously paying third-party vendors for all those services, that entrepreneur buys a commercial cleaning franchise and maybe a residential plumbing franchise.
And they just layer these businesses on top of their real estate portfolio.
Exactly. They instantly have a captive client, base their own properties, which guarantees base revenue for the franchise, and then they scale the franchise outward into the local market.
They are hacking the local ecosystem to serve their core business.
That is brilliant. It's basically vertical integration on a local level.
It really is.
But even with those two groups doing so well, the data points to a third tier of operator. The heavy hitters, the professional franchisees or MBOs, multi-unit, multi-brand operators.
Yeah, this is the apex predator of the franchise ecosystem. This is all they do.
They are not bolting a concept onto a different business, and they are certainly not trying to escape a corporate job. They view franchise brands simply as highly tuned, plug-and-play investment vehicles.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Are they just buying 20 Days Hot Chicken locations? Because at a certain point, aren't they just building their own bloated corporate management structure again?
They are building a management structure, yes, but one that is hyper-efficient and completely decoupled from brand development. A true MUMBO might own 20 Dave's Hot Chicken locations, 15 Jersey Mike's, and 10 boutique fitness studios.
Wow, so completely different industries.
Right, and they centralize their HR, their accounting, and their regional management. They are constantly hunting for two specific things. First, the early-stage land grab, where they lock down exclusive territory rights for a booming concept before anyone else in their state even knows it exists.
And what's the second thing?
The distressed asset play.
Distressed asset play, meaning they buy out the mom-and-pop franchisee who is failing.
Exactly. They find an operator who has a great location but just terrible management. They buy them out for pennies on the dollar, drop in their highly trained regional management team, and flip the unit to profitability in months.
Okay, so we have the burned-out corporate executive, the synergy-hacking entrepreneur, and the professional MBO empire builder. But looking across all the performance metrics in the sources, there is one specific background that consistently outshines every other demographic.
Yeah, it's super pronounced.
It's so pronounced that franchisors aggressively court this group, frequently offering massive 10 to 15% discounts on initial franchise fees just to get them into their system.
The military veteran.
Yes. I found this absolutely fascinating. The operational data explicitly proves that military veterans make the highest performing franchisees.
Oh.
But I have to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
Why? I mean, the military is a massive trillion-dollar government bureaucracy. A local sandwich shop is a razor-thin margin retail hustle. Where is the actual mechanical crossover in those skill sets?
It really comes down to understanding the fundamental physics of a franchise model. To succeed in this space, you must have an incredibly strict adherence to a rigid system.
Right.
You are handed a comprehensive sizing page playbook. You do not get to rewrite the menu because you feel creative on a Tuesday.
Right. You don't change the logo.
No, and you execute the standard operating procedures exactly as they are written, down to the exact temperature of the fry vat.
Because the franchisor has already burned tens of millions of dollars figuring out the supply chain and the optimal customer experience.
Right.
You are paying for the right to just run the play.
Exactly. And military veterans fundamentally excel at regimen. They intimately understand chain of command. They respect structure and standard operating procedures because in the previous life, ignoring these procedures could result in catastrophic failure.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this is the absolute crux of the veteran advantage regimen is only half the equation.
What is the other half?
Chaos. The day-to-day reality of running a physical brick-and-mortar business involves unpredictable, sheer human chaos.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. You can have the most flawless operations manual in the world, perfectly detailing how to make a sandwich, but you can't flip to page 52 when the grease trap overflows into the dining room.
Right.
Or when two of your line cooks walk out mid-shift and a customer is screaming at your cashier all at the same time.
Precisely. In those moments, the manual is completely useless. And veterans are uniquely trained to adapt and make rapid, highly consequential decisions in incredibly volatile, high-stress environments.
Yeah, they don't freeze up.
No, they don't. They can handle the sudden, visceral chaos of a retail environment while still ultimately respecting the overarching operational framework once the fire is put out.
I'm picturing a jazz musician. To be a great jazz musician, you first have to master reading sheet music perfectly. You have to understand the rigid scales, the structure, the absolute unbreakable rules of music theory.
I like this analogy, yeah.
But once you are on stage and the drummer drops a stick or the tempo shifts unexpectedly, you have to be able to improvise flawlessly without stopping the show. Veterans respect the sheet music of the franchise, but they have the operational chops to improvise when the system temporarily breaks down.
That is a perfect parallel. It is the rare duality of structure and adaptability. And you can see just how rare that is when you contrast the veteran profile with other types of highly successful entrepreneurs.
Like who?
Take the high-ticket, business-to-consumer sales hustler.
The guy who can sell ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah.
The charismatic closer.
Yes, exactly. The person who is outgoing, incredibly persuasive, and can sit in a homeowner's living room and confidently sell them a $20,000 custom pool installation.
Or a massive solar panel array.
Right. They are fantastic at revenue generation, but ask that same charismatic closer to manage a fast food restaurant.
I imagine it would be a complete bloodbath.
It would be a total operational collapse, because managing a fast food joint means managing 40 to 60 entry-level minimum wage employees.
Yeah, mostly teenagers.
Exactly, running across 3 different shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with constant, relentless turnover. The charismatic closer drowns in that logistical nightmare. They need a low headcount, high-ticket model.
And on the flip side, you have the polished, enterprise-level B2B salesperson, the person who thrives on setting up highly sophisticated scheduled meetings weeks in advance with other corporate executives.
Oh, yeah. If you put them in a noisy, messy retail environment where 3 people are calling in sick via text message 5 minutes before a shift, they will literally have a panic attack.
Completely. But the veteran thrives in managing that complex, high-turnover human element. They actually know how to motivate a 19-year-old shift leader. They know how to triage a disaster.
So the takeaway here is that the very first step of franchise wealth creation is rigorous, almost painful self-awareness.
You cannot just pick a business because you like the product. You have to ruthlessly match the daily operational reality of the business to your specific psychological profile.
Yeah, if you are an enterprise B2B seller, you should be looking at white-collar stashing franchises or executive coaching models. If you are a military veteran, you leverage your ability to manage large teams and execute complex logistics in food or home services.
Because misalignment here isn't just an inconvenience, it's financially fatal.
It really is.
Okay, so let's say our veteran finds the perfect fit. They buy their first unit, they grind it out, they execute the playbook flawlessly, and they prove they can run a highly profitable operation.
Yeah.
This brings us to a massive pivot point in the operational data.
Right, because surviving the first unit is just the entry fee.
Exactly. Once you prove you can run one unit effectively, you unlock the actual wealth creation engine of this entire industry. You step into the world of multi-unit scaling.
Yes.
So let's break down the mechanics of this. How do you go from owning a single successful neighborhood location to commanding a regional empire? Because looking at the data, it seems like there are massive, almost unfair advantages granted to operators once they prove themselves and get, quote-unquote, in the club.
It all revolves around a mechanism known as the deal flow flywheel.
Okay.
When you are an outsider looking to buy a business, you only see what is publicly listed for sale on business broker websites. And usually if a business is publicly listed, there's a reason it hasn't been snatched up privately.
Right, it's the leftovers.
Exactly. But let's say you own 3 highly successful locations of a national brand. You are known in the system. The corporate brand trusts you.
You are a known, de-risked entity to the franchisor.
Right. Now, let's say another franchisee in the next county over, we will call him. Terry owns 10 locations, and he wants to retire. He is looking to offload 3 of his underperforming units.
Terry's not going to list those publicly and deal with a bunch of tire kickers.
Never. He goes directly to the proven MMBO operator in the system. The franchisor wants you to buy them because they know you can turn them around, and Terry wants you to buy them because he knows you actually have the capital and the operational credibility to close the deal.
So you get exclusive access to off-market deal flow that an outsider will never even hear a whisper about.
Exactly.
You just bolt Terry's 3 units onto your existing 3 units, and overnight you have 6. Then a year later, someone else retires and you buy their 5. It is an avalanche of compounded off-market growth.
It is.
But here is where I get stuck. How on earth are they financing this hypergrowth? Buying physical businesses requires massive capital.
This is where we have to look at the mechanics of commercial banking and SBA loans, the Small Business Administration.
Right.
If an independent entrepreneur walks into a bank and says, hey, I want a $2 million loan to open my second independent, unbranded sandwich shop, the bank's risk department starts sweating immediately.
Oh, for sure. They have no idea if the first shop's success was just luck or a particularly good location or maybe just a trendy menu that will fade in 3 years.
Right. Mom and pop restaurants have a notoriously terrifying failure rate. The bank has almost zero predictive data on them.
But if you walk into that exact same bank as a multi-unit operator for a massive national franchise, the conversation is entirely different.
Completely different. You are not bringing the bank the financial data of one independent store. You are bringing them the aggregated historical financial data of 2,000 stores operating nationwide over the last 20 years.
So you are basically handing the underwriter a statistical guarantee.
Precisely. The bank sees a proven, resilient, highly standardized system. They know exactly what the failure rate is, and it is usually fractionally small for top-tier brands.
Right.
Because the risk is fundamentally outsourced to the franchisor's data, proven franchisees get incredibly favorable lending terms, often heavily backed by SBA guarantees. And this allows them to leverage debt to fuel hypergrowth in a way an independent operator never could.
Which brings us right back to the investment banker I mentioned at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Yeah.
This perfectly illustrates the power of combining deal flow with cheap debt.
It really does.
This guy saw the financials for a single Orange Theory fitness location.
Yeah, he asked the owner what his profit was, assuming the massive number he heard was for a whole portfolio of locations.
Right, and when the owner clarified, no, that is my profit from just this one single location, the investment banker immediately recognized the underlying math.
He didn't care about fitness at all. He just saw a mathematically perfect cash flow machine.
So he buys one, he learns the system, then he leverages his banking knowledge to utilize SBA financing and private investor capital to rapidly scale. And he doesn't just stick to Orange Theory either.
No, he realizes the system works across totally different industries.
Exactly. Over the next 7 years, he buys into Restore Hyper Wellness, Pop-Up Bagels, Marco's Pizza. He aggressively scales to 120 physical locations across multiple brands.
And in just 7 years, operating purely as a MUMBO, he built a localized corporate conglomerate generating an estimated $300 to $500 million in annual revenue.
It's just staggering. But here's the piece of the puzzle that really caught my attention, the exit multiple. When you build something that big, you eventually want to sell it, right?
Yes, the final wealth multiplier.
When this multi-unit operator decides he wants to retire at 41 and sell his massive portfolio to a private equity firm, he doesn't sell it for the standard valuation of an independent business. The operational data clearly shows that franchise portfolios trade at a 1 to 3 times higher multiple on exit.
That's right.
I need you to explain the mechanics of that. Why would a private equity firm pay 3 times more for a portfolio of franchise pizza places and gyms than they would for a highly successful independent regional restaurant group with the exact same revenue? That just seems like bad math for the private equity firm.
Well, to understand this, we have to look at what private equity is actually buying. They evaluate businesses based on EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It is basically a measure of pure operational cash flow. When private equity buys an independent restaurant group, they are utterly terrified of founder risk.
Right. If the visionary chef leaves or the charismatic founder steps away, does the magic disappear? Does the customer loyalty just vanish?
Exactly. The business is entirely reliant on the genius of the people running it. But when private equity buys a portfolio of 100 Marco's Pizzas, they are acquiring a completely de-risked, systemized cash flow machine.
They aren't reliant on a visionary founder at all.
No, they are buying the rights to an ironclad, mathematically proven operational playbook that is backed by national marketing campaigns and multi-billion-dollar supply chains.
So they are basically buying durable, predictable yield.
Precisely. They pay a massive premium for the certainty that the cash flow will continue long after the seller walks away.
Okay, I have to jump in and heavily push back here.
Go ahead.
We are talking about scaling to 100 locations.
Yeah.
If scaling is the ultimate key to wealth, doesn't buying all this commercial real estate, signing massive 10-year retail leases, and spending $500,000 building out physical storefronts create a massive, terrifying financial risk?
It's a huge commitment.
Right. What if you pick the wrong street corner? What if a new highway bypasses your pizza location and suddenly your foot traffic drops by 80%? You are trapped in that lease.
That is a highly astute challenge, and it is the exact fear that keeps most people out of physical retail. But it transitions us perfectly into one of the most surprising structural insights from the data.
Okay, let's hear it.
You do not actually need expensive physical real estate or dangerous commercial leases to scale a massive franchise empire.
Wait, are you saying you can build a massive local empire without a storefront?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the highest margin, fastest growing multi-unit empires right now are being built entirely without retail space. They rely on a financial concept called territory density within the home services sector.
Which brings us to the artificial turf case study. This completely upended my understanding of this space.
It is a phenomenal look at alternative operational models. This is a project-based home services business. You are installing artificial turf in residential backyards.
So no storefront.
No storefront. There is no expensive commercial retail lease. Your office is essentially just a small industrial warehouse to park trucks and store materials. Therefore, your fixed operational costs are incredibly low.
And it is completely driven by massive, undeniable macroeconomic trends. You have cities in Nevada, Arizona, and Florida actively passing aggressive water restrictions, practically outlawing the watering of natural grass.
Yeah.
The demand isn't just organic, it is essentially being mandated by local municipal government.
Exactly. You are surfing a massive demographic and regulatory wave. So let's look at the actual unit economics of this.
Right.
The initial investment to buy into this turf franchise and launch your first territory is between $121,000 to $163,000. The average territory generates a little under $600,000 in annual revenue, operating with a net margin of about 21%.
21% net margin on a physical blue-collar service business is fantastic compared to food.
Oh.
But I still don't see the massive wealth creation yet. 600 grand in revenue is a great small business, but it's not an empire.
Because the real magic doesn't happen in the first territory. The wealth creation is unlocked through the density cheat code. Let's break down the math of scaling this.
Okay.
Your first territory costs that $120,000+ because you have to buy the initial heavy-duty trucks, the specialized installation equipment, and you have to fund your first 3 to 6 months of working capital and local marketing.
So you are basically paying for the heavy physical infrastructure to start the engine.
Yes. But when you want to expand and buy the exclusive operating rights to a second, third, or fourth neighboring territory, essentially expanding your map on the wall, you already own the trucks.
Right.
You already have the expensive installation equipment. Your administrative back office is already built. All you are paying for is the franchise fee for the new zip codes, which is usually only $30,000 to $50,000.
So the incremental cost of expansion just absolutely plummets.
Precisely. You are deploying the exact same trucks, the exact same installation crews, and the exact same management team across a much wider aggregated map. Your fixed costs stay totally flat, but your addressable market quadruples.
It is exactly like buying the expansion pack for a complex board game. You pay a small fee to get double the playable map, you unlock all these new zones and resources, but you don't have to buy the expensive plastic pieces, the board, and the rulebook all over again.
That's a great way to think about it.
You just expand your reach using the tools you already have.
That is exactly how the territory density model functions. And if we connect this back to the MIO scaling strategy, the data breaks down the compounding math.
Let's hear it.
If a franchisee systematically acquires 5 of these aggregated turf territories, they have essentially built a $3 million business. At a 20% margin, that yields $600,000 in pure liquid cash flow every single year.
$600,000 a year in cash flow, and you never had to sign a single terrifying, personally guaranteed commercial retail lease.
Right.
And if one neighborhood in your territory gets hit hard by a local economic slump and isn't buying turf, you just drive your trucks 20 miles to the next neighborhood.
Right.
You have drastically lowered your risk profile compared to building 5 separate, geographically anchored physical restaurants.
You are infinitely more flexible. You aren't waiting for the customer to come to your expensive real estate. You are taking the service directly to them.
Okay, I have to push back again though.
Let's do it.
Territory density is brilliant for keeping overhead low, but turf installation is a high-ticket, discretionary purchase. What happens when the housing market crashes? What happens when interest rates spike and homeowners stop taking out HELACs to spend 15 grand on fake grass? The revenue isn't exactly durable in a deep recession.
That's a very fair point.
What if a listener wants a model that practically guarantees recurring cash flow? regardless of what the broader economy is doing.
Well, if you are looking for an absolute economic fortress, you have to pivot away from discretionary home services entirely and look at concepts that tap into recurring insulated ecosystems. And the absolute holy grail of recurring ecosystems in the franchise world right now is medical insurance reimbursements.
Which perfectly tees up the pediatric speech and ABA therapy case study.
Yeah, what is fascinating here is that we are moving entirely out of retail and home services and stepping into localized healthcare. ABA therapy applied behavior analysis is the gold standard, heavily utilized treatment for children diagnosed with autism or severe speech deficits.
Now, the barrier to entry here is significantly higher. You do need a physical, specialized clinical center. The operational data shows it costs between $300,000 and $800,000 to build out, staff, and launch one of these clinics.
That is a heavy upfront capital requirement, but the upside is staggering. The data shows that top mature locations generate between $1.3 million and $1.5 million annually.
Wow.
And here is the mechanical cheat code that makes this model a financial fortress. These vital services are heavily legally mandated to be reimbursed by medical insurance.
We need to deeply unpack why insurance billing completely changes the business physics. Because if you own a retail store, a coffee shop, or even that church business we just talked about, you wake up on the first of every month at absolute zero.
Right.
You have to fight a zero-sum game for every single transaction.
Yeah.
You have to constantly market. You have to convince the customer to part with their own money. You have to sell. You have to close.
It is exhausting. It's a grind. But medical insurance billing changes the entire paradigm. The patient's family is not bearing the brunt of the out-of-pocket cost, which completely removes the traditional friction of a high-ticket sale.
Yeah.
It provides a highly reliable, incredibly lucrative payout structure directly from massive insurance conglomerates.
And it isn't a one-and-done transaction either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Pediatric developmental therapy requires recurring, highly scheduled, intensive visits, often several times a week over the course of months or even years.
It creates a deeply sticky, fundamentally built-in client base. If the economy completely crashes, parents will absolutely stop going out to eat. They will cancel their vacations, and they certainly will delay getting artificial turf installed.
Exactly.
But they are not going to stop taking their child to vital insurance-covered developmental therapy. It is the absolute last thing they will cut.
It is virtually recession-proof. It fulfills an incredibly vital, deeply emotional societal mission, and yet it still generates margins that rival the best fitness concepts. The operational data suggests these clinics operate with margins in the range of 23 to 33%.
23 to 33% margin on $1.5 million in highly durable revenue? That is profound. But looking at how these therapy centers actually drive their growth, it isn't through expensive billboards or Facebook ads, is it?
No, it relies almost entirely on the localized quality of the clinical therapists to drive intense, deeply rooted word of mouth within highly connected parental support groups. If your clinic provides exceptional, life-changing care for a child, the parents in local community groups, special education networks, and online forums become an unstoppable, zero-cost marketing engine for you.
It is deeply community-driven, and the structural analysis actually draws a direct, fascinating parallel between this clinical therapy model and the recurring, quote-unquote, cult-like revenue generated by high-end boutique fitness franchises.
Mechanically, it is a remarkably apt comparison. Think about a concept like a high-end reformer Pilates studio or an Orange Theory fitness.
Yeah, we see reformer Pilates absolutely everywhere right now. The data shows the investment there is around $500,000 to $700,000 for the physical build-out, but they can generate over $1 million a year in revenue with a massive 30% EBITDA margin.
And why do they achieve those staggering margins? Because just like the therapy clinic, they operate on a rigid subscription-style membership model.
It is not a casual transactional relationship where someone drops in once a month.
Right. Members form a deep, almost tribal loyalty to the specific trainers, the specific time slots, and the community of other members. It ceases to be a purchase and becomes a recurring, deeply ingrained behavioral habit.
I think this perfectly aligns with the crucial why of many potential franchisees. Before you buy anything, you really have to define your underlying psychological motivation. Some people don't just want the absolute highest possible cash flow, they want a legacy in their community.
They want their wealth creation to be tied to a real mission. It is incredibly common for a parent of a special needs child who has experienced the profound, life-altering impact of ABA therapy firsthand to want to open one of these centers.
Yeah.
They can build immense generational wealth for their family while simultaneously providing a critical, desperately needed service to their local community.
It is the ultimate alignment of purpose and profit. And we have to stop here and pivot.
Okay.
Because we have painted a very rosy, highly lucrative picture so far.
Yeah.
$500 million empires, bulletproof insurance revenue, territory density cheat codes.
We have. And we must pivot aggressively because the operational data is brutally clear that this space is not without severe catastrophic danger.
People can, and absolutely do, lose everything, their savings, their homes, their marriages, if they misalign their skills, ignore the granular data, or fall into romanticized emotional traps.
This happens every day.
Which brings us to the unsexy, dangerous reality of franchising. And let's start with the biggest psychological trap of all, the gourmet coffee shop.
This is the absolute classic example of passion completely blinding a buyer to basic economics.
Oh, for sure. Everyone, at some point, wants to own a local coffee shop. You picture yourself sitting in a distressed leather chair, reading a great book, smelling the freshly roasted beans, chatting with the quirky neighborhood regulars while jazz plays softly in the background. It feels like a lifestyle, not a business.
It is a beautiful, intoxicating fantasy. But let's look at the brutal mechanical physics of a coffee shop provided in the operational data.
Let's do it.
A gourmet sit-down coffee shop costs between $260,000 to $900,000 to open, depending on the footprint and equipment, and the average operating margin, a mere 15%.
15%, compared to 21% for laying fake grass out of a truck or 30% for Pilates. We really need to explain why that margin is so abysmally low.
Well, it comes down to the physical limits of time and space, combined with terrible inventory dynamics. First, you are dealing with highly perishable inventory. Milk spoils, pastries go stale at the end of the day. That is pure margin going into the dumpster every single night.
Right.
Second, consider the massive employee turnover in food service, requiring constant retraining. And third, and most importantly, there is a physical cap on how much money you can make per minute.
Right. A barista can only physically pull so many espresso shots per hour. If you have a line out the door, you are still capped by the speed of the espresso machine in human hands. And if your average ticket is only $4 for a latte, you have to sell thousands of them just to cover your expensive commercial lease.
You are running on a treadmill that you can never speed up. This is why you must never buy a franchise, simply because you are passionate about the product.
But people do it all the time.
We see this constantly. Exactly. If you want to make serious money in food, you have to understand the underlying mechanics of the model, not the romance of the product.
Yeah.
Which actually leads us to one of the most profound, deeply hidden secrets in the entire legacy franchise industry.
Real estate play.
Yes. What is fascinating here is that many of the massive legacy fast food franchises, the iconic brands like Burger King, Dunkin', or Pizza Hut are actually stealth commercial real estate plays masquerading as hamburger stands.
Okay, I need you to break this down mechanically, because this absolutely blew my mind when I realized how it actually works.
Well, when you look at an incredibly wealthy, older franchisee who owns 30 Burger Kings, you naturally assume their immense wealth came from selling millions of Whoppers and French fries over 30 years.
Naturally, yeah.
But in reality, selling burgers is just the mechanism to fund the real strategy. Those operators grind out the brutal, chaotic operations of the fast food business for years purely to generate enough operational capital to eventually buy the physical dirt and the physical building underneath the restaurant.
Wow, they transition from tenant to landlord.
Precisely. And eventually, as they reach their 60s and they no longer want to deal with the midnight chaos of grease fires, managing thousands of teenage employees, and navigating supply chain headaches, they execute a brilliant, highly structured maneuver.
What do?
They sell off the operating rights of the business, the franchise agreement and the equipment to a younger, hungrier franchisee, but they keep ownership of the real estate.
So they just sit back, go play golf, and collect rent.
Yes, but they are collecting rent from a guaranteed, brand-backed, highly capitalized corporate tenant. The physical building is completely custom-built for that brand, often with corporate guarantees on the lease.
Oh, so it's super secure.
It acts like a bond. It is an incredibly stable, highly lucrative commercial real estate portfolio that was entirely funded by grinding out fast food operations.
That is the ultimate long game. Use the cash flow of the burgers to buy the dirt, then retire on the rent. But getting to that level of sophistication requires dodging a massive amount of landmines early on.
It does.
The operational data highlights several massive red flags that potential buyers must watch out for to avoid getting wiped out. Starting with a deeply predatory concept known as the sharecropper model.
This is critical for anyone listening who has limited capital and is looking for a cheap entry point. There are franchises out there in the commercial cleaning or vending space that only cost $8,000 or $10,000 to buy into.
Like the bucket and mop commercial cleaning routes, where you are cleaning office bathrooms at 2 a.m.
Right. You are not really buying a scalable business. You are just buying yourself a grueling, low-paying, highly physical job. And the franchisor absolutely knows this.
That's the crazy part.
The corporate office might sell 200 of these cheap franchises a month across the country, fully expecting that 100 of them will fail, burn out, and quit within the first 60 days.
It is a volume churn game for the corporate office. They don't actually care if you succeed or get wealthy because they already collected your $8,000 fee, and there's a massive line of desperate people right behind you ready to buy the exact same route when you fail.
It is entirely predatory. You must look for data anomalies before you invest a single dollar.
How do you do that?
The most critical document you will receive is the FDD, the Franchise Disclosure Document. It is a massive, legally mandated document that details the financial health of the system. You have to look deeply into the FDD for closure spikes. If a brand had 10 locations closed 4 years ago, but suddenly had 50 locations closed last year, something is foundationally, catastrophically broken in their model.
Or the franchisor might just be getting greedy and sacrificing their own operators. We have to talk about cannibalization.
Oh, this is a classic trap.
You buy a territory, you work 80 hours a week, you build a great, highly profitable business, and then 3 years later, the corporate office looks at a map and decides they want to extract more franchise fees from your city. So they aggressively slice your mathematically protected territory in half and sell a brand new location directly across the street from you to a new franchisee.
They just cannibalized your hard-earned customer base to pad their own corporate bottom line. It's a complete betrayal of the partnership.
So how does a prospective buyer actually protect themselves from all of this? How do you pierce the corporate marketing veil and know if a brand is a true partner or a predator?
Granular data transparency and relentless investigation are your ultimate weapons. But you absolutely cannot just rely on the corporate office to tell you the truth.
Right, because if you ask a franchisor for reference calls, they're obviously going to introduce you to their 3 hand-picked, most wildly successful franchisees. They will hand you the phone numbers of the guys doing $5 million in volume who just love the brand.
You need to talk to those top performers, of course, to understand the absolute ceiling of the concept. But to find the unsexy, dangerous reality of the day-to-day operations, you must become a private investigator.
What does that entail?
You have to track down former franchisees, people who recently left the system, sold out, or outright failed, and reach out to them cold on platforms like LinkedIn.
You have to get them on the phone and ask the hard, uncomfortable questions. Did the corporate office actually provide the localized marketing support they promised in the brochure?
Exactly.
Are the mandated supply chain costs artificially inflated to give the franchisor kickbacks? You have to synthesize the raw data from both the massive winners and the devastated losers to find the actual mathematical truth of the system.
It is the only way to truly de-risk the investment and ensure you aren't walking into a sharecropper trap.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We have gone deep into the mechanics, the psychology, and the math. Let's pull this all together.
The core revelation here is that franchising, when executed at the highest level, it's not just buying yourself a job. It is an elite, highly structured, deeply strategic wealth vehicle.
And it is heavily tailored for specific operational profiles. We saw exactly how the unique duality of military veterans, their deep respect for rigid structure, combined with their ability to improvise during intense human chaos, makes them uniquely suited to dominate physical operations.
We learned that immense wealth is almost never generated by a romantic passion for the product, but by an absolute cold obsession with the underlying economics.
You win by aggressively leveraging territory density to keep fixed real estate costs near zero. You secure durable, recession-proof revenue through medical insurance reimbursements or recurring community-driven subscription models.
And ultimately, you unlock the real wealth by utilizing the deal flow flywheel and SBA debt to scale into multi-unit empires, allowing you to command massive, outsized exit multiples from private equity.
It is a predetermined playbook. You do not have to invent the game, you don't have to write the code, and you don't have to build the brand. You just have to execute the playbook better, faster, and more ruthlessly than anyone else in your market.
Spot on.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, highly provocative thought to ponder. We did not discuss this explicitly in the data today, but it builds directly on everything we've just unpacked regarding the corporate escapee profile.
What happens when the broader macroeconomic landscape shifts underneath us?
Exactly. Look at what is happening with artificial intelligence right now. If AI and advanced automation rapidly eliminate massive swaths of traditional white-collar corporate jobs over the next decade, if the corporate escapee persona suddenly multiplies by a factor of 10 out of sheer necessity, could the next major shift in the global economy be a mass migration of former knowledge workers into localized physical franchise ownership?
That is a fascinating, highly plausible hypothesis. If the digital screen-based world becomes completely dominated and saturated by AI, the physical blue-collar world might become the last genuinely safe haven for human entrepreneurs.
Think about it. Could the local artificial turf installer, the neighborhood pediatric ABA therapy clinic, and the multi-unit fitness empire soon be run by former tech executives, displaced software engineers, and middle managers looking for a tangible business?
Wow.
Could physical, localized franchising become the ultimate AI-proof, durable revenue stream of the 21st century?
It certainly seems like the playbook is already written and waiting for them.
Just remember, when the economic waters get murky and the future of your industry feels uncertain, sometimes the best move isn't to try and build a brand new boat from scratch. Sometimes you just need to find the people who already have the blueprints, secure the territory, and run the play.